the fastest available verbal excursion through the 21st century brain. Jan's relentless verbal barrage points to the possibilities of a potential individual assault on your own personal powers that be. A symbolic romp in, around, and through the literal world. The bane of Barca Lounger thinking and the enemy of the complacent neuron. Not to be taken for any kind of psychological or medical advice.
I want to pick up where the tape ran out on us last time for just a little bit, having to do with dogs and tummy rubs. And I started out trying to get you to do one of those tricks that I hope all of you can do by now. And I said simultaneously, think about the fact that a dog has no higher nervous system activity. That is, he cannot think. He is not conscious in any way. And I said, imagine a dog that's aware of that, but was suddenly made conscious in the human sense, so that he was conscious as humans are, so that he could hear me talk, and plus he was simultaneously conscious of his normal state vis-a-vis a human perception, right? And the tape ran out before I really got into it. And I started out, I at least got out the fact that a dog can enjoy having his tummy rubbed by you, but he has no conception. Now imagine the dog's hearing me say this, and he now suddenly has human intelligence. And I say that there's a human hand, and he understands what I'm talking about now, your master's hand, and there's your tummy. And they're put together, and they're fun. And he goes, yeah. But without the nervous system operating at the level at which it does in humans, that is, intelligence, the dog could not see, could not think about, could not perceive, fill in the other synonym you want to, of your hand and his stomach. Now I said that much, but even back at the dog level, right quick, a dog would know the difference between your hand and his stomach, even though I said he would not. But now he obviously would. He might bite your hand if you felt threatened, but he's not going to bite his own stomach. So even at the dog level, you can say in a certain way that the dog does know the difference, that there is some kind of difference between your hand and his stomach. But now, the crux. When you put them two together, and it is an enjoyable process, it did not have to be enjoyable, but in this case we'll assume it is, that there is something to which he takes serious notice, in this case a pleasurable act. It is not seen, if the dog, we were talking about some kind of dog intelligence, it is not seen as two things that in some way came together. But even though, now you've got to think with both of those ideas simultaneously now, or you're going to miss it. He can be, in a sense, aware that your hand and his stomach are two different things. He's not going to mistake the two. But the process, the enjoyable process of his tummy being rubbed, is not seen in any way as two separate things coming together. It is simply the process. And he could not divide the process. There is no way that he can separate the falling down and you doing this, and it's pleasurable. There is no way without human intelligence that you can separate a process, in this case a pleasurable one. It could be an unpleasurable one, that you could be in the habit of hitting at this dog, and he sees your hand, and he does not mistake your hand. Let's say that you hit him on his head occasionally. He does not mistake your hand for his head. In a sense, he does know that there is a difference. But once he is hit, or once he is rubbed, whether it be pleasurable or otherwise, there is no way without human intelligence that you can separate the process, the act, the verb, into two nouns, into two separate components. And it could be other than nouns. Only human intelligence can do that, and for a reason. But the part that I didn't get to that I wanted to show is that his swinging door in a dog, what would pass for his swinging door, is high a level as intelligent as you could call an animal. His swinging door does not in any way is not able to take into consideration any distinction between an out there and an in here. If that is still too tricky, let me point out one I've told you before in another way, for another purpose. A dog, I assume everyone's dog, and even maybe a cat, you can holler food or eat. Or maybe you do a whole sentence. Hey, little darling, is it about time to eat? And he runs right to the bowl and runs right where you keep the food, and you would think, if I ask, does he understand what you're talking about? And you'd say, yeah, it's the food, and it's not. It's the eating. He does not understand the food. He does not understand the noun food in the can. Now you can say that you can pull out the can or say food, and he'll run right where you keep the cans. But trust me, for a reason I'm telling you, without human intelligence, he is not in any way perceptive, receptive, conscious, intelligent, knowing of food as a noun. It is the process. A can of food does not mean anything. The eating of the food does. Without human intelligence, there is no, now there are other forms of intelligence. Like the dog, he can say food and he'll run right to it or look. There's no doubt that he knows he's about to eat. But it's got nothing to do with food, the noun. It has to do with food, the eating process. No intelligence but man can take into consideration two ideas that in some way is operating out there, like a can of food, and then internally, let's say, the swinging door would be his appetite. That in some way they're going to come together. It just simply is or it's not. But without human intelligence, there is no separation, and hence there is no way to put it together. He cannot put together, a dog or any other creature with that kind of intelligence, cannot put together the hand and his tummy and make him come out the pleasurable act of tummy rub. He cannot put a can of food together and his appetite and make it come out eating. It is either eating and a tummy rub or it's not. And there is no way that he can break down the components. There is no way withal that he can put them together. Without the swinging door of human intelligence, there is no distinction between an in here and an out there. Even though a dog, in some respects we can say, relatively speaking, is more intelligent than a fish has no conception of water. I'll run you back there one more time. You could take the world's most intelligent fish. All right? If you can do it, we could make the fish suddenly have human intelligence, and it has no conception of water. The fish and water are one. Without the water continually flowing through the fish is dead. Every other creature is the same way. Without a non-differential flow of life through the dog swinging door, through a tree swinging door, it would not serve its purpose. It would not be alive. It's the same with man, except man has an additional responsibility, and it distinguishes between the two. That is the only way that man is able to, apparently, compared to the other creatures, manipulate the environment. Without that, you wouldn't even try. There's just nowhere else to talk about. That's just the end of it. You have to differentiate that there is a hunger in me, I'm hungry, and then there's food to have. I'll pursue it. And since we're no longer out living in the bushes and physically, that is non-verbally, below the level of the operational intelligence of humans, that we're having to look for food that way, you do things such as look in the paper to see if there's a sale. Or maybe it's late at night and you even look in the phone book to call that market up the street to find out if indeed they're open this time of night. In the revolutionary sense of doing this, you must, whilst being this kind of intelligent creature, with that kind of swinging door that allows, that insists upon a distinction between in here and out there, even while being that, in a sense you have got to forge a kind of enriched, a kind of more complex, seamless spectrum that's apparently between, to put it in words, would be apparently between the environment and your intelligence. It's not a lost state. For any of you that can still learn something about the way life presents things to man, the old idea, whether it be religious or otherwise, that almost anything I can talk about, if you hear it in a certain way, you can think, well, this sounds like a lost state. That is, at one time we were not subject to this kind of swinging door mentality, to where there's an out there and an in here, and there's a separation. That in other words, we've lost something. We got driven from the garden of pristine innocence. I just thought I'd mention that if any of you still have, well, I'm sure some of you still have noises like that, if you still listen to them at all, believe me, you are in reverse. And you're near an area where you can experience severe, if not irreparable, tire damage. You back up far enough and that kind of thing, and you can't even get any traction and go back to where you were. It is no fall from grace, and I can't even describe it three-dimensional because it sounds like, many of the things I talk about sounds like, if you heard it from a city level, sounds like that I am talking about the fall from the garden again. That it sounds like that I can use examples like the dog, and it almost sounds like that I'm saying that the dog is better off. And he's not. Unless you want to be a dog. Then you don't need this. All you need is a certain, give me the screwdriver and the hammer, and I can bring you back to the level of a dog's intelligence. It won't take but 30 seconds or so. But, in a sense, you have got to have those kinds of abilities, but they have got to be enriched. They are more complex. It is not simply making a circle. It is not going back to the Garden of Eden. I could call it that, but it would be going back to the Garden of Eden that had been built upon some of the drawings I've seen of the speculations of Bible, to stay in the biblical scene, that you'd go back around, but it's like a merry-go-round, remember, with that screw worm gear, that if you went back to the Garden of Eden, you're up a floor above where Adam and Eve were. And that's not even literally true, but the idea that in some way we have lost something and we've got to regain our pristine innocence is not true. You're asking to go backwards. But, in the sense that I said that a dog has no ability whatsoever, no other creature does, to distinguish between an in here and an out there, in one real sense, or I wouldn't say it verbally, doing this, you must forge willfully, unnaturally, a kind of new enriched, complex merger between out there and in here. And I say you must. Some of you it's already happened to. It happens to people accidentally, which again is what you find replete in the history of metaphysics, of superconscious states, mystical states, of people just being blown away, people feeling like that they just became one with the universe. Doesn't that sound familiar? I know exactly what it was. They don't. Just something that happened. But they feel as though, well, some of you, as I've admitted before, I guess that's a big effort on my part, I'm sure some of you took enough drugs at one time that you probably at least once had that feeling off some of the psychedelic drugs that just like you and everything else just ran together. People's experiences have even tried to draw and paint such things as that. As far as I know, it wasn't Dolly's intention, but that kind of thing. You remember all the melting watches and stuff. I've seen some of the poster art. I can't remember any artist's name, but from the 60s, so-called psychedelic art at the time, and it was like everything running together. And there have been descriptions of that almost back as far as man has been recording history. And it's always been attributed to the gods. I just described it to you. I just described it to you last week, and now wrapping up one little piece of it, quite specifically and scientifically, even though I was calling it a doggy door. Of course, we should look at it. I just used doggy and cat door since I assumed you knew what it was. It is really life. You got to now substitute man, the position of man and the cat. Now substitute that for life and man. And we are life's man door. I'm not trying to infer that life thinks as much of us as it does a cat, but or that you do your cat. As all of you surely know, man has been many times referred to as the social animal. And zoologists and biologists and other ologists have taken their own interpretation of that and ran off with it, and no need for me to recover that. To say that man is a social animal, what is actually being said is this, that beyond the mere physical level of all other creatures here, man engages in additional energy transactions. To wit, talk. That is exactly what is behind the idea of man being a social animal. That's it. That he is engaged continually in energy transactions that go beyond any other level of any creature that you can observe with ordinary sight. What you generally think of is just the physical level of all other creatures. And man does it also. But it goes beyond it. And I've talked, of course, many times about talk. But let me see if, when I started about energizing and some other things that I was just hitting at last time we taped, some of you were beginning to get a feel of something. Consider 2 or 3 examples from far different fields. Gourmets. Gourmets not only get energy from eating, they get energy from talking about eating. That chuckle's all right. It's not a joke. It's not funny. Whenever you see, and if I must, well, I will plug this in, that as an ordinary person, at line level, at city level consciousness, you can look upon other people's apparent interest in life, their hobbies. Not to say that you don't have much of a palate. A warm beer and a donut. That's on holidays. I mean, you know. Let's assume right quick that you have looked around, that something comes on, you see all these cooking shows on PBS, or you look around now on the newsstands and there are magazines about eating. Well, there always have been, but there seems to be I've noticed 1 or 2 new ones, you know, $6 and $8 a piece, big-time magazines. And you could look upon somebody else and think, you know, geez, what a cheesy hobby, pardon the expression. But you see, and you realize, and you see these things about people dressing all up and going out and spending $2,000 or $3,000 for a 10-hour meal and all that, and you think, you know what nuts. See? Think about it again. A gourmet just like you, but a gourmet not only, and I mean the gourmet in the full sense of the word. If it's somebody sitting around right now around a waffle shop or at Denny's, over some real phony bologna fried cheese sandwich, and he turns to somebody else and they talk about, you know, I like a good cheese sandwich, but whatever happened to those kind of places that used to be out there on the Jersey Turnpike that you wouldn't expect it, but they used to make a grilled cheese sandwich and they had some kind of special sauce. And a guy says, yeah, I remember that. And they talk about it. All right, you can say that they're sitting there being sociable. You can say, well, they stopped in there to eat. If we were playing psychologist, I could say, well, maybe one of them wasn't all that hungry. He was tired. Maybe one of them wasn't even all that tired or hungry. He'd been driving all night, and he just craved human companionship, man being the social animal he is. We could say all of that. But then look that they are both eating food. They're both taking in nourishment of some kind, but a gourmet, that is somebody that will talk even for just 5 minutes. I just started off using gourmet to give you the hard example to start with. A gourmet not only gets energy from food like you and I do, being non-gourmets, they engage in energy transactions by talking about eating. How about verbal eroticism? Well, phone sex, I keep hearing about. But how about if you went into a XXX movie and you just turned your head, or the film, the lens or something happened, and all you got was a soundtrack for a few minutes. Let's say that you were in there, you wanted to see a good dirty movie. That way the visual goes out. But they keep talking. And they can be talking if you like that sort of thing. Whatever's going on, they can keep talking. You're looking at a blank screen, and you might not get them leave. You might, Or people doing it together, men and women in bed. I hear. The point is, not only energy from sex itself, energy beyond that. I'm not saying good or bad now with the gourmets or the sexual. I'm just saying it is additional energy, not only from the sex act, but talking about it. It is additional energy, and from one view you can see that as being the singular, the unique responsibility that man has on this planet that no other creature has. There is a level of responsibility, of complexity of energy exchanges, even below man. You can surely see that the complexity of the energy transactions in which a worm can engage. All the things that a worm can do with the soil. What it can do with birds that eat the worms. No, and then, of course, indirectly, whatever eats the birds, but directly, as far as the worm has a direct impact on its environment, it's fairly simplistic. It's important, very important, because you don't know it. Some worms would be in bad shape if we didn't have them. But compared to, let us say, a bird that may eat the worm, the bird's responsibility of energy exchange is even more complex. Because he's not only part of the food chain itself, the physical carnivorous food chain, but he also does such things as pick up seeds, and then he defecates, and he leaves seeds in new places, and he spreads plant life, of course, which would all be bonkers were it not for plant life. Unless some of you know the trick about doing carbohydrates that man is not privy to yet on his own. But then you get into humans right quick. And I want you to see that there is a level of complexity, of responsibility, of energy exchanges all the way from worms, even inert matter, the earth itself, and then into worms, birds, and everything else. And you keep going just up the ordinarily perceived of ecological food chain. But you get to man, and he's not only doing things more complex. If we cut off man's intellect right here just for a second, just man, the being, man, the primate, is at a higher level of just physical energy exchanges than anybody else. But then it's even more so. And it's more so on that singular ability that man has on this planet, and that is to talk. Talk is not useless. Talk is not wasteful. Talk is not dumb. Now, if you're a revolutionist, that may be boring and harsh on your ears. That's just a little humor, see? Because I'm sure most of you still love to talk, and you especially love to hear yourself talk. But we'll get into that some other century. Talk is an energy exchange beyond the mere physical level. And in any area that seems to be, which I don't know what the exception would be, of a unique area of interest in so-called human affairs that humans have that we do not share with other creatures, then whatever it is, no matter how dumb it may look to you, how silly, how stupid, such as gourmeting for a habit, for a hobby, it is not stupid. It is not your interest, but it's not stupid. Now, if I'd had another purpose, I could start out and talk about God. I might not have used that term, but I could have tacitly, you would have thought, when I started laughing at gourmeting, if there is such a verb, there is now. I could talk about, why in the hell would you want to be a gourmet? If you're hungry, you eat, right? What the hell is about to dress all up, fly across the country, fly to Paris just for one meal, or read books especially? I could make it sound like the height of human folly has got to be what? Books about food. Think about it. That's almost as bad, well, hell it is. When I say bad, I mean useless. I was going to say it's worse than pornography. And I didn't mean that judgmentally. Anybody ever hear somebody point out that what they thought, it was just somebody in the city, that the real problem with pornography was, the danger of it was, that if too many people saw it, they'd want to see more. Just a joke. I could have made it sound like what could be more fallacious, just silly, than a book about food, to sit there and look at food and to talk about it. And maybe the book says, full page color photographs, not black and white, color photograph. Who the hell wants to sit there and look at a color photograph of a big old dish of Rocky Road ice cream or a cake? If you don't look at it, go eat the mother, right? But see now, from another view, it is not silly, it is not stupid, because those people involved with such things, over a long range, as I said, over just a 5-minute passing in the night in a Denny's, they are not only getting energy from food, they're getting energy from talking about food. How about one I brought up before in a slightly different context, rather extreme in time and space? How about the one? We'll assume that you've never done it, so we'll talk about other people out there. That you see somebody pulling out at an intersection after they stopped, and they go to pull out, and a car whizzes by through a stop sign. Out of sight. I mean, he's gone, and the guy that almost got hit lays on the horn. Now you can think, is the man that dumb? The car's out of sight. What's blowing the horn now going to do? Right? Dumb. I mean, he's just so mad he just got carried away or something, right? No. Think about this. It's an energy transfer going on that, in a sense, one of the participants is already gone. All right, one more. How about what I would suggest you might be the ultimate along this line of examples? Well, surely, even while I'm talking, all of you, just hit your own hobby, fields of interest, somebody you know. But if you find somebody else's interest as being silly, redundant, wasteful, such as talking about food, and to think, talking about food, God, is that dumb. Food is a hobby, or sex is a hobby. You either do it or you don't. If you're not in the mood to eat, you don't do it. If you're not in the mood to fuck, you don't fuck. But to talk about something like that, you're wrong. They are exchanging. They are transmitting, transferring, exchanging energy beyond just the level that other people are doing that, such as eating. They are churning up energy for life by eating, but then they're doing it even after they're through eating. They'll sit around and talk about eating. Now you can say, well, boy, that's dumb. Well, what do you do when you get through about eating? Well, I usually talk about sports, I think. Need I say more? If you think we can laugh at gourmeting as a hobby, of looking at it, how about buying a sports book? I mean, it's enough to watch people to pay money. But we're going to jump on you now. Well, some of you are not gourmets, but many of you I know. I've seen you with basketball impressions still in your palm. I know all about that. Dirt on your little sneakers. How about this? What could be dumber than going out and pay to watch somebody else exercise? Now, if that's not dumb enough to go out there and fight traffic and sit in the cold and watch somebody else run around, you got some exercise. You exchange some energy by driving out to the stadium, by driving down to the corner to buy a paper, just for the sports section, threw everything else away. Got some energy, but then maybe you stopped at a Waffle House and you sat amongst a guy and you said, Jesus, have you ever seen, oh, Bubba, have you ever seen a jump like that, a hook shot? And the guy, wow. Poetry in motion. You don't hear comments like that very often in a huddle house. But there it is. The game's over. It was over hours ago, another part of the world, and here's two guys sitting. They're exchanging some energy by going to get the paper, let's say, for that example. But now they're talking about it. Wow, look at that photograph. Jeez, is that something? All right, I was going to say I can leave it. You can look all around that in one sense, this is just one view, it's not all that's going on, that you can take everything that man has in common, let us say, with other primates, with other creatures on this planet. Take all of that and draw a line, and we're all, more or less, men a little more complex, but more or less, and you can say that man and the other primates, and of course everybody else in lesser degrees, but man and these creatures are all in relatively similar energy exchanges. Mainly having to do with what's just referred to as the food chain itself. Just churning up food, plowing it, eating it, burning it down, replanting, just feeding. But then, right above that line would be this. Exemplified, proven to be existing by what? You all know. The ability to talk. Forget the ability to reason, to think, and all that stuff. If the thing can't talk, forget the rest of it. Barring, of course, some obvious physical restraint upon speech. In this one area, you can look at all of human activity, things that you think are reasonable in life, things that you think that are irresponsible, things that you think are dumb, all the interests people have that is simply human. And rather than looking at it as being dumb, rather than being a critic, rather than listening to your own noises of saying, geez, is that stupid, is that useless, look at it another way. It is always on top of something that you can trace to a lower level, like sports, exercise, pornography, sex, gourmeting, eating. No matter how weird you may say this human hobby is, I've never heard of such a thing. Collecting stamps. Collecting stamps. I've heard it all my life, but sit down for just a second and think about it. A person that spends, let's say a real fanatic for it, as many hours probably a day as he works. 6, 8 hours a day, almost every day he spends in something, in the actual pursuit of stamps, reading about stamps, where there might be new stamps, little pieces of things, and think how dumb. Collecting food, hoarding, what all collecting is. You can find that none of it just simply springs like a Thea from Zeus's deranged forehead, that suddenly some group of humans somewhere go, wow, let's take up a hobby that doesn't have any relationship to squat. You can't do it. In the same way that you can't think of a truly mythical beast. All you can do is think about flying pigs. It does not spring forth out of nowhere. All the hobbies can be seen as an added energy exchange on something that would be taking place even if man did not have intelligence and could not talk. Now, if he could not talk, he would not be collecting stamps. You're right, because if he didn't talk, we wouldn't have a post office. If he didn't talk, we wouldn't have a government, we wouldn't have letters, we wouldn't have any reason to write, right? That's got to be R-I-G-H-T, comma, R-I-G-H-T. But he would be collecting something else. Anything that you find that seems to be strange, that you do not immediately recognize as a legitimate interest in life, it just shows that you don't have any legitimate sight. Because you can see it as being simply an extension of some basic need, I can say for humanity, but it's for life, that's being carried beyond the level that where the original is not necessarily required to be done in its initial form, or it's being done enough that it's almost become recreational, like sex, that most people now, so I hear, it sounds good to me, probably fuck for fun as much as they do, if not more so in many parts of the world, as they do to create little nippers. So you can look at that as being a hobby of sorts. That is, in other words, you could say that life, assuming it still needs the human race, you could say, if you can hear me right quick, that life could say, I don't care whether people enjoy fucking or not. But they got to, at least some of them got to, or I'm going to lose this whole string, this whole herd down here known as man. And right now I need them. And so it doesn't really care if you enjoy it, just so sometimes you just got the biological urge like, I'm so horny I'm going to die. That sort of thing. But look at it, that once that level is reached somewhere and maintained in life, and all you got to do is look around, you can begin to see it yourself, not just in sex, but in other things, then it becomes sort of recreational. It appears to be that it becomes in part almost your prerogative. But what it really takes on is this additional level then begins to talk about what it was doing down at the lower level. And all it is an increased energy transaction. All right. I was going to say look around your own, and I was going to give you just one more, which I would submit to you, if you've been following some of this, might be, in my scenario, in my sketch, the ultimate use of talk above something that is above another level, above an ordinary level. That would be, I suggest you, talking about oneself. And of course one's life. What kind of guy I am, what's happened to me. Think about that. is this not the masterpiece in the city? You not only live, but you talk about living. Does that about wrap it up? Even if you don't have any particular hobbies, gourmeting, pornography, blowing your horn at people. No matter. Somebody says, well, what's your hobby? And they go through several. You go, no. And they look like sort of puzzled, and you think, oh, I'm out of the game. Contraire, because then you say, I'll tell you the kind of guy I am. And there we go. I'm the kind of guy, I don't know, I just don't have many hobbies. Now, I know you may think that's strange, but hear me out. I'm sure you'll find this interesting, because I've thought about it. I've sat around many a time and thought about it, and other people's asked me. They've said, Fred? And I'd say, yes. And they'd say, you don't seem to have any particular interest in real hobbies or passions in life. And I would say, that's true. And I've thought about it. And now you're asking me, wait, I know you'll find this interesting. I seem to be a man with no hobbies. Living and talking about living. That encompasses every known hobby, including the hobby of having no hobbies. It includes all interest above the physical level. All potential human interest in activities, including the kind of activity of, I've got no interest in kind of human activities. It is all-encompassing. It is the masterpiece. It is the Globe Theater. Forget Shakespeare's version. The Victorian, Elizabethan versions. It is Globe Theater. That is, it is the drama taking place throughout this planet. You can't get away from it. That if you do nothing else, you're going to exchange energy by not only living, got no choice, but you're going to talk about living. We've got to turn the tape over. We're back on short tape time tonight. A new Evo opens. So I'm not going to say much more about this other than the fact, and perhaps one or two other facts, that anything that you think I have said about talk before, that you took as being perhaps an abject, unconditional attack on useless talk, at times you're correct. But realize this, that life is arranged things in such a way that almost everyone, would you repeat that, almost everyone is expected and will not only live, but they will talk incessantly about living. Specifically about their living. What kind of guy I am and what's happened to me. That's expected. Life is depending upon it. Please note also, you did not have to learn it. Nobody encouraged you. If you're just walking around, old Chief Two Eyes dumb in the city, you may think, well, my mother talked a lot. That's why I'm so verbose. No, life talks a lot. Your mother may have talked a lot, and it would be understandable if you did, but she didn't make you do it through her talk. Life made you do it through your genes, perhaps. But you are expected to talk a lot. If you were that important, if any of us were that important, if it made a difference to life, if you were the final straw on the camel's back, etc., then life would notice. But it does not notice if one person does not talk that much. But notice that you are inclined to. Notice that you are wired up. Your molecules want to talk. And they specifically want to talk about what kind of guy you are and what's happened to you. The thing is about doing such as this, and people who did not understand it in the past, as I point out, of all sorts, all stripes of would-be religious and extraordinary groups of people throughout history, one of the things, or one or two that they all had in common, was they would stagger around some area, contemplate it, debate it, or try to enforce it, that they'd all get together and engage in what? No talk. And they had all kinds of flighty ideas about what it was, but I'm telling you what it was. What it did was, indirectly with them, was it made the possibility of having some energy left over. You could look at it conversely, but it amounts to the same thing. You notice I have never encouraged anyone to become a mute. I have, if all of you don't know it, I have given little undertakings in the past, little excursions, of going off for a while, 48 hours, a couple of days, and go off and not talk. Go out somewhere just by yourself and not talk. And I've even had some past excursions that all of you weren't privy to, of going out in life, in everyday life, and pretend that you couldn't talk. To go into a situation that you would have normally had to talk and pretend to be a deaf mute. At least pretend to be mute and go out and go shopping and do things that other people do. But all of that is just for purposes to try and focus your attention in a certain way. Because it's not, per se, of any great benefit simply not to talk. You have got to understand, you've got to have some understanding of what talk is about, the necessity of talk that appears from one view to be superfluous, to be charitable, it seems to be silly, it seems to be not of your liking, but that talk is a necessary part of man's responsibility. It is how he, in a singular way, churns up, transmits, transfers more energy than any other creature. And he can do it from a distance. He can blow the horn when the car's gone. He can do it through memory. He can churn up energy by bringing up things that from a three-dimensional view no longer exist, by people who are dead, by historical events that are over. And apparently bring them back out. It's as though you went out in the garbage. It's even worse. It's like you went to the garbage and the garbage had become invisible, that it rotted, disappeared, and you can still in some way through memory get in there and pull it out and eat it again and get a little energy every time, a little more. It's only by this and indirectly through talk, because you'd have no memory without talking, etc. You can look right now in the sense that talk is being the city's evil twin brother of the synonym intelligence. No, I'm going to leave that. I had something else I want to mention. I got some more questions here. If we don't run out of tape, I was going to get to, but on a practical matter. Everyone in the world, all of you people, everybody has some estrangement with family, some old friend. There's somebody. You don't have to scratch your head if you don't have anything that's really that disturbing. Don't feel like you're, miss the boat. But I get all the questions, plus I know in my own nervous system how life is wired up. But at any rate, for everyone who does have a sense of estrangement from somebody, a family member, brother, sister, mother, father, all of that, somebody, that there is truly a continuing estrangement, even if you haven't seen them. You realize that if you unexpectedly turned the corner or walked into a room and there they were, it would be uncomfortable, to say the least. And many of you, directly and otherwise, ask me over and over throughout the times about, and correctly so, you're aware of the fact that this is a waste. Forget spiritual and moralistic reasons, that this is bad news for me. And yet it's gone on so long, and for 20 years now I haven't spoken to so-and-so, but for 20 years every time I would think his or her name, or even see a name that resembled it, it was internally, I would throw him down, I'd stomp him again, I'd curse him. And after all that, how in the world could I ever back up? How could I ever get over this when it's a waste of time? I should be able to stop that. All right, I'm going to tell you how. I'm going to tell you the cure. You people out there that just are strangers or visitors watching these tapes, don't take any of this seriously. It is not psychiatry and it's not a medical treatment, and you can just listen to it and consider it a bunch of philosophical flim-flam, just ramblings. The rest of you, I'm going to tell you the cure, not some treatment. I'll tell you how to cure it. It's quite simple. It is the revolutionist pretense that everything couldn't be better. That's it. There's nothing else to think about. There's nothing to talk about regarding what apparently were the factual basis, was the factual basis of the initial estrangement, of the ensuing years or months or hours that's gone by that you and you assume the other partner have hated each other, or at least been severely disturbed at one another, full of complaints, is just immediately pretend as though things could not be better. There is no one in the general bell curve, the so-called middle class, on the planet Earth that can withstand that. If they can withstand it, even as a family member, you better get away, because you're dealing with somebody that's inflammable. You're dealing with somebody that could blow up on you. But back to what normally occurs to normal people. Under those conditions, no one can withstand that. What else do you want? Anybody believes that you have, and think how severe it is, even if you don't seem to be a participant in such a scenario, but think about somebody that had a severe falling out with their father, their own blood progenitor, or their mother, and have gone for years and either not spoken or maybe speak once a year, and then it's just that they're both just tight-jawed. And that sort of thing gone for years. And you think, well, God, she's going to die or I'm going to die, and we'll never be able to resolve this. It just got out of hand. You may have tried to think about it and rationalize, like, we should have done something then. That's just part of the energy transfer. That your hobby was being estranged with your mother. Not only did you get the estrangement, you hadn't seen her in 20 years. But does that mean that life is going to miss the kind of energy exchanges that go on between a mother and a son? Not hardly. Because for 20 years, you've been cursing her. And how could you do that to me? And then conversely, worrying about, oh, God, this is not right to feel that way about your mother. Yeah, but how many mothers would treat you that way? Oh, well, I can't keep thinking about this. So maybe you don't for a month. But then you're back at it, see? Life has things arranged that, in a sense, I'm being sort of facetious, but that you can participate and help it move around energy sort of at your leisure, right? But like you can say, well, it upsets me to think about this conflict between my mother and myself. That's what guys would say it would be running seminars, my mother and myself. Remember that? But it's as though life says, well, okay, you don't have to do it right now. And you go, wow. And so then you worry about something else. You worry about, tax season. You worry about your car. But then later, it's like life says, take your time, because life knows. Life knows that you'll come around and you'll churn up the energy some more. If not right now, tomorrow. If not tomorrow, next week. If not next week, blah, blah, blah. It would seem to be a very sticky affair, what I started to say. And I have dealt with some of you people that I understood the basis of you feeling as though there was a serious estrangement, was probably an understatement, between some of you and your family. And some of you believed properly or without real foundation at the time that perhaps one of your family members was on the verge of dying or could die shortly, and you've even come to me and expressed things like, well, I hate for this to happen, but it's like, I don't know what to do. We can't back up. She still won't treat me. I still can't seem to do. What can I do? People cannot withstand the pretense of anything, because the pretense of anything done by revolutionists is it. There's really nothing else to talk about. I should stop the tape here. Except I know your consciousness, your own intelligence, go, well, even the few of you that went, ah, then you go, ah, and then you think about it. All you got to do, if you're really a would-be revolutionist, if you indeed belong in this, is all you got to do, most of you, is do something like that once. Some of you, I guess, I don't find fault with this, but you may have to go do it twice, because the once you just go, no, that was a lucky guess on his part. I don't know how this happened. But you can have almost a bloodletting, almost a deadly estrangement between you and somebody else. Especially if it's blood kin, it's even worse. It's gone on for years, and I'm telling you exactly, stop it just like that, as you walk right in and you pretend. I like to phrase my sentences where it ends up in me saying usually pretense. I like doing that, trust me, rather than say pretend, because too many of you are used to hearing pretend, 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 not from me, but throughout life. To go into the person and operate on the basis of the pretense. Your pretense. Forget about them. They're just an irrelevant player. You're now talking back to this phantom radio station, broadcasting you, direct that you wouldn't look at. All you can do is you. And very few people can do this, is you just go in immediately. And the pretense is that things couldn't be better. A little sidestep, that people cannot withstand that. That there it is, let's say you and your mother, and you hadn't spoken in 20 years, and suddenly you walk in, you find out where she's going to be at a reunion or somewhere at a funeral, and you just walk up like it was 20 years and 1 day ago before this happened. And you just go up and you hug her and kiss her. Hi, Mom, just like it was 20 years ago. I'm saying that nobody can withstand that in the city. But now this can happen. The little side trip I was going to take you on a minute. Now I'll start out and I'll give the kind of descriptions that they would give if we were city folks and we were talking psychologically. But your mother can look like the rabbit in the flashlight. Like, is that you? What? It's life. But what the little thing I wanted to, little side trip I want to take you on when I said that it happens that fast. If you know what you're doing, it does. Because you did it and you're not going back down. But it may take, I was going to say, a few 30, 40 seconds, even a minute, that your mother, in this case, may play a little game, may do a little dance like this can't be true, or what is this? Or all of you can surely picture some version of that. You know what is up? It's just on a small scale when this sort of thing takes place. It's on a small scale, but life has got things so arranged that it does not have to look down intelligently, that is consciously itself at every little detail, as you should know by now. But things are so arranged that most people will... Now, it sounds like psychological, but it's, believe me, it's laws of physics and chemistry. That it takes people a bit, a few seconds, maybe a minute, to really catch into this new dance. And what this does is allow you, the person who tried to do this, may I put it this way, every opportunity to give it up. Such as I said it happened just like this, and you go try it, and your mother goes, "Get me a glass." And she does 2 or 3 things. You think, "My God, it's not working." Or she goes, "What do you think you're doing?" You understand? If most people tried this, I don't say you people, if I could trick ordinary people into trying something like this, that would about wrap them up. Even if I swore they would work. And trust me, and I was real enthusiastic and was a great public speaker and had my nose and ears fixed, and I looked all, and I really struck them. They thought, if he said it, I believe it. And they'd go do it, but as soon as their mother went, "What kind of," if your mother talked like this, "what kind of shit are you trying to pull on me?" Most people go, "Uh-oh." And of course they could come back if they saw fit to want to bother me, come back and say, "Well, fine idea, it didn't work." So that's why I took you off on a side trip, that it might take. It could take 30 or 40 seconds. And what that was supposed to do is for you to abandon such foolish activity. It's for your mother. I'll go ahead and finish the scenario a little bit. And your mother goes, "What is it? What are you trying to pull?" And you just ignore all that. You just hug her a little closer and you say, "Boy, you look good. You've lost weight since the last time I saw you." "What do you mean the last time you hadn't seen me in 20 years? And you hug and you heart. "Well, there's old Uncle Charlie. I didn't know he was here. Is he still, did he get married? I hear he got married. And you go, huh? And you holler, Charlie, don't Mom look good? Dad, hey, come here, Charlie." Another 10 or 15 seconds, and no one on this planet can withstand that. No one. They cannot. And those of you that correctly belong in this, you know I don't have to scream anymore. You know I have stated the closest thing that you can state as an irrefutable, inescapable, three-dimensional fact. No one on this planet, the Pope, Sigmund Freud, if we could dig him up, whoever you could, Einstein, some student that he flunked that used to write graffiti on the bathroom walls about Einstein. Nobody can withstand that. The pretense of anything is the thing itself, if a revolutionist does it. That is, if somebody does it, and once you understand that the pretense of anything is the thing, then of course you don't stop just because it doesn't take in 2 seconds, because the people are not used to it. For 20 years she thought you hated her, and she hated you. So I could say, and I guess a bunch of you now will laugh out quick, 20 years of that, You know, it may take a minute to undo that. See, you laugh. Except it's not funny under most conditions. If I had ordinary people try this, that minute would kill it. Because life is arranged in such a way that you would try it if you were ordinary, and you'd abandon it within that minute. By the time your mother did say once or twice, like, hey, get away from me. And you just ignore all that. You just hug her a little tighter. You just change the subject. You just like, now this is happening. All you're doing is you're doing the pretense that things couldn't be better. Just give her another kiss and say, God, boy, I'm so glad to see you. And you talk to other people and come over here and see Mom. Hey, let's go over here. I want you to meet somebody. I brought a friend here. Come over here. A minute tops. And it's gone. It's all over. Nothing can withstand that. It is the direct interference with the food chain. It is direct interference with a dance. And if you understand how to do something like that, just on the ordinary level, nothing can withstand it. People will have to dance with you. Life will dance with you at that level because there's no great consequence what one person does. It is to you if you're going to do this, if you ever expect to get it freed from old intelligence at all, you can't have those kind of estrangements going on. They're not morally bad, but you can't have it. It's just not good. And the thing is, you can get, as some of you have suspected as soon as I say this, that you can probably get more energy from doing something like that than 4 or 5 good weeks or months of meetings here with me 3 times a week. One of those can just pop your lid off. 20 years of something that was just gut-wrenching, heart-rending, gone like that. And all the things you thought about it. Perhaps you've been in analysis. Probably you tried to write a novel about it. You tried to justify it. You tried to do everything in the world. You prayed about it. You tried to change religions about it. And what it took was 1 minute of pretending. And it's literally. It's all over. Your pretense is now the reality of it. And nobody can withstand it. No ordinary person on this planet. Because life does not have the need to withstand it on the minute level of 2 people. But you also, if you can hear it, you do hear that nobody in life does that. And one way to look at it is why they don't is why. You want to all say it together? Because it would work. That's why. Because it goes past some success. It goes way past some success. It's a cure. It's not a fucking treatment. A treatment's some success. How do you feel? Well, I feel some better. Well, continue the treatments.